Hey guys, my name is Markus Weigelt, and I'm a German hard techno DJ and producer. This video is probably addressed to the peeps that want to produce harder techno with an easy-to-handle DAW like FL Studio, right? I've already made a decent amount of releases that I produced with FL Studio versions. My first one was 6, I think. Now we are at 21. So, to push my YouTube channel a little bit further, I thought I'd create a little insight of my production flow and some other things and ideas that can make a track very special if the bass is solid, right? So I assume you've already worked with a version of FL Studio, or at least have seen the graphical user interface, all right? For those who have not, maybe a very short introduction. So this right here is the playlist where you arrange your whole song. The song can contain patterns and audio clips. This kick, for example, is an audio sample I created before and just dragged and dropped it into the playlist. But you could also drop it into a pattern which is here in the left. You just place it right on top or on bottom of another slot. And then place the pattern into your playlist to make sure it is in your song, right? Nothing too fancy. Down here you have your mixer. Normally you would say track 1 in the playlist is aligned to track 1 in your mixer, but that's not the case in FL Studio to give you the opportunity of free routing and other crazy things. In other words, you have to align an audio clip or instrument manually to a mixer track. Okay, so let's check out what I've already done. I layered a kick out of several samples, processed them, and recorded everything to create a new audio sample out of it. I know. The part of producing the kick drum is probably the hardest because it's basically your fundamental element. If the kick doesn't work right, the track is probably not played by other DJs in the club, except you have another element in your production that has the potential to compensate such things. For example, a very catchy synth line or something else that has some hit potential. Don't focus too much on the kick because you will probably edit it in your production process to make it fit with all the other things that you've added. But it should be at least a solid base to build on, all right? Cool. So let's check out how to set a filter which cuts out the low end of the kick. This is a very common procedure in most of all techno tracks, by the way. To get a filter, there is more than one solution, but it's the best option to load a so-called VST plugin into your kick track right here in the mixer that then acts as an effect plugin, okay? By the way, you could also load a VST into a pattern, but the difference is that it then acts as an instrument, a so-called generator, because it generates the sound, all right? So this concept is really important to keep in mind because you will work with plugins all the time while producing music. At least that is, if you don't want to use your unprocessed samples only. Okay, so we know that we need a filter. Let's search for a plugin that fits our needs. I recommend the Fruity filter because it's a very simple and straightforward plugin to use. You have your cutoff frequency right here in the top left, and with a right click on it, you can simply create a so-called automation clip that simply programs the change of a value over time according to the curve you put in. This is the third kind of element that you find in your playlist, an automation clip. These are basically the elements that you use to create a whole song. Audio samples, patterns, and automations. Period. All right, so let's cover the last basic part of this introduction, the patterns. A pattern contains a so-called step sequencer that you can program just by clicking the buttons, but in case you want to program melodies or pitch changes, you can simply switch to a piano roll that lets you program a whole sonata or whatever you prefer, just by clicking the right mouse button on the instrument of your choice and press piano roll. It acts just like the sequencer, and you can see the time axis while the cursor plays all the notes and steps you activated. Finally, you can drag and drop your programmed pattern into the playlist and arrange your whole song. Okay, now let's move a bit forward after we covered all the basic stuff of the program. Let's talk hard techno things, all right? So one of the most important things you need to keep in mind is your whole vision of the track, aka the arrangement of your track. DJs won't play your track if you start in the middle of the track because there's no space for them to mix the track into another one. Simple thought, right? Try to build up your track a minute or two. Then comes all the meaningful shit that you wanted to put in your track, and after the climax, try to build it out just like it came in. It's a really important point because there are so many awesome productions out there that simply lack of a solid arrangement to mix it. It always triggers me when I hear that because I want to play those tracks, but I just can't because of what we talked about before. Let me show you one of my productions quickly. It is a collab together with Sebastian Groth, and it's called Midnight Resistance. It has been played by many big artists like Rebecca. Have a listen. You notice what I was talking about before? We arrange the track in a way that it starts building up until the climax part comes in, so DJs can mix the track into another one. And after all elements and the climax parts have been launched, we build down the track until the outro fades out, so DJs can mix the next track into our production. Many people have problems to find new ideas after 2 or 3 minutes, but that's mostly because they already launch all main elements in the beginning of the arrangement, which is, at least for the most cases, not the way hard techno tracks are made. All right. Another important part of making a hard techno track or music in general is gain staging. Staging gain simply means adjusting the volume after every processment step. So for example, if you load a distortion effect plugin onto an instrument, the volume will probably increase, and your ears will start bleeding, or your speakers blow up, or whatever. What I'm trying to say is, adjust the volume after every step you change to the volume your signal had before, and you're fine. You can easily check out the loudness at the decibel meter, which tells you the actual volume. Keep that in mind when experimenting with weird sounds and effects. I also made the experience that it gets way out of hand too quickly. Which directly leads me to the next thing. Always leave enough headroom. That means you always should try to produce at a decent volume that has enough room until it reaches 0 decibel. If you start with a kick drum that has -1 dB after processing, then you probably end up with weird sound artifacts and ugly clipping after adding a few more elements to the track. That is way out of range and totally red area. Just try to find the right volume so you don't end up at 0 decibel and clipping. I personally always set the processed kick drum to -9 decibel, which seems to be very quiet at first. But if you want to hear more, you just have to put up the volume of your speakers or headphones, right? It's just for the production process to make sure no further elements or the whole track gets stopped by that nasty 0 decibel line. Remember, red is bad, even when it sounds dirty and hard. All right, let's come to my favorite topic. Try out everything. And by everything, I mean literally everything the DAW supports. Check out every instrument, synth, and effect, and learn how to create sounds from scratch. This is the best way to create your personal style and learn how to use all the tools to make dirty and nasty rhythms or sharp percussions or pumping low-ends. There are so many cool distortion effects you can try out to make your sounds way fatter than they normally sound. Check this out. And at last, there's one point that I personally prefer to keep in mind. Try to melodize your tracks a little bit. Melodies don't mean automatically that a hard techno track gets softer. On the contrary. Sometimes they deliver the missing link to an epic production that sounds wider and more meaningful than just a toneless production. Even when it's only a running bass line or a distorted plucked synth or whatever. I always try to build some melodies with synths, and I have the feeling that those elements fulfill my tracks. You even can try out every melody in the piano roll, just by clicking and correcting note by note without having the fear of making the track sound discordantly or abstinous, because hey, it's hard techno, and most of the sounds are weird anyway. Here are some of my melodic productions, just to give you an idea what I'm talking about. And there you have it, a few beginner's tips for producing hard techno with FL Studio. But I don't want to cut you off right now. I thought at the end I could show you another production, but this time I cutted the actual production session so you can check out all the elements and the arrangement of the track. It's called Ion Storm, and it's a collab between me and Pappenheimer. The track is brand new, and we hope you enjoy it. Check it out. So as you probably noticed, the track volume is at almost 0 decibel, but that's okay because the track is mixed and mastered. Mastering is basically the last step of your production to come alive because you transform your mix down into a mastered piece of music that fits all other productions on the market. I personally prefer to send the track to a professional mastering studio that makes it right. But sometimes I also master things by myself. I think that depends on the kind of track. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned a few things. If you're new to this scene and handling all the tools can be quite overwhelming, I get that. I will definitively make a video about how to create a decent low end with samples and instruments in the future. Until then, I wish you all the best and no clipping at your productions. Cheers, guys.